I want to start our fifth panel, which is on human security and sustainable development. Chairperson is Professor Dr. Rajkumar Kothari, who is a professor at Department of Political Science, Diamond Harbour Women's University, West Bengal. Co-chairperson is Dr. Tanushri Purohit, who is associate professor at Amity Business School, Amity University, Haryana. And before I hand over the session to Professor Rajkumar Kothari, I want to say one thing. Happy birthday, sir. Now over to you. Sir, are you there?
Ma'am, I think sir is not there.
Tanushri, can you start?
Yeah, sure, ma'am. Very good afternoon, Dr. Nandini and all the participants and panelists. Welcome to the session on human security and sustainable development. So the most, talked about in today's scenario, how we can move towards a more sustainable future with our all resources, with 10 panelists in this session, and I would request all the panelists to stick to 5 minutes for their presentation, and then at the end of all the presentations we can have the question answer sessions. Even after presentation, if any participant any questions, so we can take the questions. And without any delay, I would like to start the session. And the first panelist is Dr. Alka R. Gupta, Associate Professor, Uday Pratap College, Varanasi. The topic of presentation is environmental degradation endangering human security, South Asian context.
Ma'am, I received her message. Her father-in-law passed away last night, so she can't. Yeah, we have Professor Rajkumar Kothari with us.
Yeah. Yes, I think he has joined.
Yeah, sir, do you want to say something? Professor Rajkumar Kothari? Sir, you are mute. Hello.
Is that
sir?
Fine?
Yes,
Can you
sir.
hear me?
Yes, sir. Sir, happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I am saying that let us start the session as already you have invited the first speaker. So let's start the proceedings.
Okay.
Since Dr. Alka is not there, we can start with Dr. Kamlesh Pritwani, Senior Faculty from Shri, Ratanlal, Kanwarlal, Patni Government PG College, Kishangarh. And the topic of presentation is Human Security in View of Climate Change, Sustaining Environmental Concerns. Dr. Kamlesh, please.
And please specify the time limit, please.
5 minutes. I've already 5 minutes for presentation, and please, I request all panelists to stick to 5 minutes for the presentation.
Sure, thank you. So, Dr. Kamlesh, the floor is yours. Unmute, please.
Ma'am, I made you co-host so you can share your screen as you asked me to do so.
Yeah, I'm sharing. See?
No, ma'am, we can't see it.
Human security in
Dr. Kamlesh, we cannot see the presentation. Please share the screen.
Otherwise, make your presentation, please, because time is short.
You can start your
Yeah.
presentation.
Yeah. I have chosen my topic, human security in view of climate change, sustaining environmental concerns. Respected Dais, Nandini ji and others, Rajkumar ji sir, on the eve of global crisis due to climate change and losing all securities in view of food, water, habitat, temperature, sea level higher, and another energy efficient other measures, I have chosen this topic. Human security is a people-oriented notion and security that seeks to integrate the various determinants of well-being of public. So the issue of human this new era, that constitute a recognized and vital component in the climate change conversation.
Dr.
Conversation
Dr.
and being
Kamlesh.
addressed in a diverse range. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's not audible properly. Can you switch off your video and only audio is, switch on? Because we are not able to hear properly.
Okay. Climate change poses an immediate threat to national security, calling on the military to incorporate climate change into broader strategic thinking about high-risk designs. The objectives for implications in the lives of ordinary people, to examine the impacts of climate change on human security, to integrate the climate change and sustainable development, to contribute to the collective community efforts to mitigate climate change and its effects. It refers to a threat multiplier due to its potential to aggregate number of the current challenges faced, like infectious disease, terrorism, and conflict over scarce resources. It can contribute to instability, lead to displacement and migration, worsen existing conflicts, and threaten global security. So we can see as climate change threaten the lives and livelihoods of billions of people, as we have seen in Africa. In Africa, by 2020, between 75 million and 250 million people are projected to be exposed to increased water stress. Agriculture production in many countries, including access to food, is projected to be severely compromised by climate variability. In Asia, by 2050, decreasing fresh water availability in most areas would put more than 1 billion people at risk. Increased death and illness are expected from cholera and from diarrhea diseases associated with increased flooding and drought that result from higher sea temperatures. In a small island developing states, rising sea levels and increased storm surges will threaten the homes and livelihoods of communities and will force displacement and permanent migration. It can contribute to food insecurity and increase the frequency and intensity of water, extreme weather events. It can lead to massive displacement and migration and conflict water and enable land and border disputes. Ultimately, it's a lack of security in the daily lives of people as climate change impacts worsen and temperature rise. Threats to securities have the potential to become more projected. The UN Security Council addressed the impacts of climate change on peace and security. The issue is still considered a vital concern. So we can say firmly that through supporting community actions, the human security approach aims to reduce disaster risk, make sustainable use of environmental resources, and foster peaceful and prosperous societies. Further, human security programs have advanced in-depth analysis of the local context to understand the multidimensional consequences of climate change and its impact on the severity and distribution of risk and vulnerability within countries. So we can conclude climate change program promote comprehensive responses that address the social, economic, and environmental impacts, help tailor disaster mitigation strategies to local capacities and resources, and ensure local engagement in resilience building efforts. So finally, I can say that immediate and sustained actions is needed to stop climate change if irreversible and potentially catastrophic. The damages are to be avoided in view of human security. And integrated policy to resolve the problem is the need of this era.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you,
Kamlesh. Within the time limit, you have done a wonderful job by identifying several important points relating to human security, why it is affected, how it is affected, what has been the role of environment in this regard. As you very rightly pointed out, that declining environment posed a sustainable challenge to the concept of human security. So thank you. If any questions and comments towards the end of all presentations, we shall wait till then. Okay, thank you. May I now invite the next speaker?
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, please. Next speaker, please. Brijesh Yadav, are you there?
Yes, he has joined, I think.
Brijesh, can you hear us? Okay, then we'll get back. We can turn to next speaker, I think, till that period. Should we move on to next speaker? Tanushri?
Yes, sure. The next speaker is Nutan Marian, Assistant Professor, Jadavpur University. The topic of a presentation is Green Technology and Sustainable Development, Emerging Trends of Electric Cars. So you can start your presentation, 5 minutes for the presentation. Please stick to time.
Okay, thank you, Tanushri ma'am. And I will begin with my presentation. So as the title of my paper reads, Green Technology and Sustainable Development, Emerging Trends of Electric Cars, we need to understand what we mean by green technology. So green technology is a broad term and a field of new innovative ways to make environmental friendly changes in everyday life. It constitutes natural resources and is meant as an alternative source of technology that reduces fossil fuels and demonstrates less damage to humans, animals, plant health, as well as the world. So green technology is environmentally friendly by definition, since it encompasses energy efficiency, health and safety concerns, renewable resource and recycling. We also need to understand that green technology policy pertains to energy, environment, economy, and the social. Moving on, in the present scenario, green technologies are playing a significant role in changing the course of nations' economic growth towards sustainability and providing an alternative socio-economic model that will enable present and the future generations to live in a clean and healthy environment in harmony with nature. Next, what I'm trying to speak is about the emissions impact of an electric vehicle compared to an ICE vehicle. What is an ICE vehicle? ICE vehicle is an internal combustion engine vehicle. Now, from an efficiency perspective, we find that electric vehicles can convert about 59% to 69% of the electrical energy from the grid to power at the wheels, whereas the battery electric vehicles also have zero tailpipe emissions. Now, what is zero tailpipe emission? Zero tailpipe emission is that they never emit exhaust gases or particulate matter from the onboard source of power. Now, coming to the scenario of India, we find that India's electricity grid is suited for electric vehicles. And India aims to have 175 gigawatts of installed renewable energy or RE capacity by 2022 and up to 450 gigawatts by 2030. Now, the country's current weighted average emission factor for the national grid has been nearly constant over the past few years. And studies have indicated that electric vehicles charged with India's electricity grid emits lower life cycle emissions and on the other hand, as the coal power capacity continues to shrink and the share of renewable increases, India's grid emission factor is expected to fall through the decade as well. And in turn resulting in gradually decreasing overall EV emissions. Now, we need to also focus on a very major milestone which India has achieved. India's Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, MNRE, has given a statement that India has achieved its non-fossil fuel-based energy target, something that was to be completed by 2030. So India achieved her target in November last year, 2021. And it has also been noted that that in the last 7.5 years, India has shown a tremendous rate of growth and has added maximum capacity for renewable energy among the large economies. I'm quickly coming to the conclusion. As we are talking about electric cars and how we find them in mainstream society, we also need to understand whether these electric cars are really as green as advertised. So we're going to look into 3 basic points. First is how the electricity is made. Broadly speaking, most electric cars sold today tend to produce significantly fewer planet warming emissions. But a lot depends on how much coal is being burnt to charge up those plug-in vehicles. And electric grids still need much more cleaner before electric vehicles are truly emissions-free. But positive news for electric vehicle is that most countries are now pushing to clean up their electric grids. As a result, researchers have found electric vehicles have generally gotten clearer too. The second point, we talk about the raw materials. Now, raw materials can be problematic. Like many other batteries, the lithium ion cells that power most of the electric vehicles rely on raw materials like cobalt, lithium, and rare earth elements. And all these materials have been linked to grave environmental and human rights concerns. Lastly, I'm going to talk about the recycling. Now, as the earlier generations of electric vehicles start to reach the end of their lives, preventing a pileup of spent batteries looms as a challenge. Now, most of today's electric vehicles use lithium-ion batteries, which can store more energy in the same space than the older ones. Now, experts have also pointed out that spent batteries contain valuable metals and other materials that can be recovered and reused. And depending on the process used, battery recycling can also use a large amount of water or emit a large amount of air pollutants. Now, with this, I will bring my presentation to an end. Thank you.
Thank you, Nutan, for your wonderful presentation. In fact, you have touched upon the core aspects relating to green technology, and in the Indian context, how India has been contributing towards the promotion of and application of green technology. And at the same time, the impact, the implications of green technology in the Indian context so far has been, according to your presentation, the outcome has been positive. and we look forward towards further promotion of this technology. And a valuable part is of your presentation I found is that battery recycling part. That when we are using this battery in the vehicles, then once again we may use it and reuse it. So that is a point to be taken note of. So thank you, and over to Tanushri.
So our next presentation is by Varkha Kanchi, Assistant Professor Chaudhary Ishwar Singh Kanya Mahavidyalaya, Dhand-Dadwana, Haryana. And the topic of presentation is Human Security and Sustainable Development. I hope she has joined. Ms. Rita, has she joined?
Sorry, ma'am. Varkha Kanchi is not there.
Is not there. Brijesh is there?
Yes, ma'am. He even texted you as well.
Okay.
I mean, in the chat box. So
Okay. So we can have Brijesh's presentation, Human Security Amidst Climate Change, a review of India's legal, institutional and policy framework. Mr. Brijesh Yadav, Assistant Professor, National Defense Academy, Pune.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for giving me opportunity to present my paper in this particular conference. My topic, as it indicates, that it tries to draw a review of India's legal, institutional and policy framework while addressing climate change. Now, what we see in previous deliberations in this particular conference also, that people have established significant linkages between human security and climate change, and in a very comprehensive manner, with emphasizing upon the multidimensional impact which has happened to individual and community life. Now, we need to study the institutional architecture also because it causes a very significant imprint upon climate change action as well as measures, because it sets the political environment for the decision making as well as delineates various principles for the same. Now, when we try to trace India's response in terms of its action and commitment to climate change as a threat to human security, the study of institutional structure and its functioning assumes critical importance. Now, if my paper basically argues two aspects, that India's institutional policy and legal architecture to address climate change or the response to climate change has been dictated by international environment. And second part, what I want to argue is that India's this policy, legal and institutional framework is something which lacks a systematic response to the whole problem of climate change, which is gaining urgency in seeing India's its own geographical and other such factors. Now, when you talk about India's institutional structure, basically initially I divided into that aspect into two time period, coinciding with two coalitional government in India. One is UPA era and another is the NDA era. Because what we have seen that prior to 2007, 2008, there was a lack of dedicated effort, or the issue of climate change did not gain that much significance in international fora or the negotiations. Now, so before 2007, what we have seen that there is a largely India's response was something which was much more less organized, with certain representatives from the Ministry of External Affairs and Ministry of Environment and Forest were employed by the government to argue for India's case, which was basically talking about that we need to have an equity principle incorporated in addressing our actions towards climate change. The former Secretary Shyam Saran was the lead point for all those negotiations, and certain amount of assistance was done by the certain technological and scientific departments, like Department of Science and Technology was involved. But one of the major developments from this particular phase was that India established this NCDMA, National Clean Development Mechanism Authority, within the Ministry of Environment and Forest. Now, the whole attention upon this institutional architecture development was much more focused during UPA regime from 2000 and the second half, in fact, from 2007 onwards. Now, when you talk about 2007 to 2014 period, UPA period, we see that there was a wide amount of attention was given to that particular issue, both in favor of imposing mitigations as well as adaptation part. Now, there are certain bodies like Prime Minister Council on Climate Change was established, which also say representation to NGOs, media, and other such organizations to develop an interdisciplinary perspective. The diplomatic negotiation which was taken up, okay, was given a much more formal shape by say creating an office or special envoy of climate change. Again, Shyam Saran, who was leading the say negotiations, was put into charge of that. Then we see that say there was certain say we can say that significant attention which also emerging in the international fora, and as a result, India in 2008 drew out its national action plan on climate change, and it further boosted towards say developing India's institutional architecture. Now, one of the say, major project of this particular period was that say creation of Indian Network for Climate Change Assessment, which was a conglomerate of say more than 100 institutions. Now, what we see that say in the international environment, there was a focus upon the financial aspect. Okay, India was also asking for equity principle, seeking fund and green technologies to say make it actions work against climate change. Now, out of in this particular persons only, there were certain divisions within the finance ministry which were created, and NABARD, one of the say important financial institutions of the country, was declared as a executive entity for dealing with the adaptation fund. Moreover, it was also attention also started developing towards making state level efforts, okay, in towards both mitigation and adaptation against climate change. But what we see that say adaptation part was much more focused in the state level responses. Now, if you look at say the period from NDA era of 2014 to 2021, we again see that there is a certain less amount of attention as compared to the 2007 to 14 period, which has been say done to the development of institutional architecture. Again, I emphasize that say this is because there has been say certain amount of say lack of pressure from the international environment. Because what we see that say, even though the intent of government was very much clear by renaming of Ministry of Environmental and Forest as Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, but there was a lack of any substantive measures towards institutional strengthening or capacity building amidst the growing challenges of the climate change. Now, when we say talk about, there was say MOEF was declared the nodal ministry, but yes, there was much more focus upon say assessment and reporting in terms of reforms on climate change measures, and less part on the policy making or substantive aspect. Now, in that particular aspect, also what we have seen that say there has been say selective prioritization, okay, or you can say that these prioritization was strategic in character, because there was a establishment of say National Adaptation Fund on climate change with more than 300 crore, 350 exactly of say budget. And again, NABARD was say this given the responsibility to say execute that particular fund. Now, when you say talk about institutional say architecture development or evolution, we say I able to find that say certain observations are there that it has slowed down in the say recent times, that is NDA era from 2014 to 21. Then we can also see that it is a reactive and much more of an ad hoc process in terms of international environment. Whenever there is a pressure upon India to act or show in its commitment in action and in principle to climate change, there has been a spate of institutional say development or architecture say evolution in India. Then thirdly, we see that say still we have not been able to say this develop significant amount of human resource in terms of to affect our negotiation or bargaining capacity on the global fora, and to at the same time to say act on our adaptation and mitigation effort also. Fourthly, what we see that say despite there being nodal ministry for coordination, etc., there is a lack of integration of efforts, and efforts are much more fragmented, okay, at ministerial level also, as well as at federal level also, because state level action plans, etc., even though they are supposed to act within National Action Plan on Climate Change, but they have say assumed diverse proportions in terms of their focus and strategies. Then one thing which is we can say that third factor which can resulted in this type of response is that there has been lack of domestic pressure from civil society as well as say legislative organ, that is parliament, to pressurize the executive to act on climate change. And it is only the international pressure which has say acted basically to say trigger say India's institutional development. Now, second aspect of my paper with respect to policy framework, again, it shows linkages between domestic polity and international sphere. What I am trying to say that India's say growing profile, economic profile due to its economic performance, its representation in global forums like G20, etc., okay, its ability to say whether the 2008 economic recession, etc., that led to say it being represented at those forums, and it was always a vocal supporter of the say concerns of LDCs and the countries which are threatened by the growing concerns of climate change. Now, this say raising profile or raising representation of India that led to, say, India getting, say, conceptualizing National Action Plan on Climate Change.
Ms. Brijesh, kindly conclude, please.
Yes, ma'am. Just a second. So what I see that, say, India's nationally determined contributions or NAPCC, etc., there have been lacking of clear defined goals, and there has been a sense of prioritization of strategic objectives in order to, say, show to the international community that India is acting on its behalf, but substantial action is something which is lacking. And this is much more visible in case of legislative framework, because there is still a lack of comprehensive legislation on climate change aspect. With the apex court and the tribunals, etc., they are handicapped in absence of such legislation while making a transformative impact with regard to climate change, which is a worldwide phenomena or which has gained much more currents. Now, what we see that, say, and National Action Plan on Climate Change, etc., is not sufficient enough to tackle climate change effectively, and a robust institutional policy and legislative environment need to be, say, developed in order for India to both show its, say, action in commitment and spirit towards tackling climate change. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Brijesh, very good presentation, and
Thanks.
you have highlighted the core points in your presentation that with regard to India's policy framework, and you have brought in the legal and institutional perspective in your analysis. I would like to add just one small point, Brijesh, in this regard.
Yes, sir.
You may react to later on if time permits after all the presentations are over. That
Yes,
as far as India is concerned, comparatively at the international level, if we see other countries, including the West, including the developed nations, that comparatively India has been doing much better. The response we get from the other countries with regard to this human security in the backdrop of climate change, I think you need to make a comparative analysis also in order to submit a clear categorical picture. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
So over to Tanushri. Please invite our next. Yeah.
Our next presenter is Ms. Aarti Ghabru. Is she there, Ms. Rita?
Yes, ma'am. She is there, and I already make her co-host.
Okay. So Ms. Aarti Ghabru, Assistant Professor, College of Horticulture and Forestry, Tumang Mandi, Himachal Pradesh. And topic of presentation is economic tools derived from plants to face bioterrorism.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Aarti Ghabru from College of Horticulture and Forestry, Thunag Mandi. So I'm talking about the economic tools derived from the plants to face bioterrorism. So basically, what is bioterrorism? Bioterrorism is a type of warfare that makes use of biological agents such as microorganisms, viruses, bacteria, protozoan, or fungi are intentionally used to inflict harm to others. These agents are invisible and microscopic yet deadly. So what are types of bioterrorism? Eco-bioterrorism and agroterrorism. Biological threat, which is infectious disease, represent a significant burden on public health and economic stability of society all over the world, being the cause of approximately 25% of 16 millions of the death. And in developing country, it reaches up above 45%. In globalized world, infectious disease outbreaks are becoming inevitable and they remain unpredictable. The spectrum of biological risk represented by infectious disease is contagious, continuous, including events that can be difficult to distinguish as natural, accidental, or intentional. Whatever the origin, it is necessary to identify emerging epidemics as soon as possible, stop them before the spiral of control, and develop suitable medical countermeasures such as novel and effective vaccine. These include natural infection and bioweapons. Infectious disease, natural infections like Black Death, which is also known as plague in the Middle Ages, Spanish influenza epidemic, which killed approximately 14 million people, and SARS coronavirus, which we known from last 2 years, which we faced pandemic in the country and globally also. Bioweapons, the emergence of some pathogens can be result of deliberate human action being employed as biological weapons. Since bioweapon use could resemble natural pandemics, it could be very difficult to differentiate between naturally occurring infections and those result from the malicious use. The Biological Weapon Convention, which is being signed in 1972 and entered into the force in 1975, bestow a prohibition on the weaponization of biological pathogens and agents. As knowledge diffuses rapidly to different parts of the world through the globalization of information and communication technology, a growing concern emerges that biologic agents could be easily used as a weapon by non-state factors such as terrorist organizations, lone actors in the future. The malicious use of synthetic or edited pathogens could possibly enable hostile actors to develop weapons that are cheaper, more powerful, and easier to use. As I told earlier also, the biological weapons are bacteria, viruses, which include Ebola, COVID-19. Now, I talked about the role of the plant constituents. Mainly during last 2 years, we have learned that there are natural antibiotics present in the environment. By using them, the practices of medicinal plants and their extract as medicine is based on the data from spiritual traditions, individual cultures, and experience of therapeutic preparations. It becoming more and more clear that medicinal plants have a strong place in modern medicine. The use of medicinal plant along with the professional medicine suggests that the mankind is returning to old experience and knowledge. Research and implementation of natural medicine as well as traditional therapeutics are driven by emergence of new diseases such as viral COVID-19. A variety of secondary metabolites, which are the bioactive compound present in the plant systems like rosemary, ginger, etc. These include pepine like protease, 3 chymotrypsin like protease, etc. present in the system, and these plant materials will inactivate the DNA system of the virus or bacteria. Possible antiviral drug candidates from natural products are I have told earlier, skull cap. It cause inhibition of influenza virus. Maiden hair tree have contained a content which is zencatin, and it also active against the influenza virus. There is many other Triptasium regi, which is active against SARS-CoV-19. Some spices or herbs like cinnamon, clove, turmeric,
Dr. Hartik, kindly conclude, please.
Okay, ma'am. So we have a various flavonoids, alkaloids, phenolics compounds, or essential oil saponins, which is present in the plant system, and by using them, we can overcome the pandemic or overcome the infectious disease caused by the viral or bacterial pathogens. The plant-based derived therapeutics have been produced from major diseases occurring in these countries through either time-consuming transgenic approaches or accelerated transgenic expression system using viral vectors. Problem encounter when using bioactive secondary metabolites such as their solubility, stability, and bioavailability need to be addressed for using these metabolites as a medicine. Extensive studies and investments are calling from new drug development strategies using herbal extract today and tomorrow to save the lives of sapiens on our planet from pandemics like COVID-19. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Aarti. Again, another important presentation on a very interesting topic, that is bioterrorism. Over the years, how it is becoming a very important factor in the field of climate change and so on. And in the presentation, you have essentially focused on the role of medicinal plants to deal with the threat emanating from bioterrorism. So in the coming years, we'd like to see that these medicinal plants are effectively used in a more systematic manner to deal with the emerging threat of bioterrorism. Very important, and thank you. And in case of any questions, please wait till the end. Over
Okay,
to Tanushri.
So our next presenter is Ms. Nirupama AK, research scholar, University of Kerala. Has she joined, Ms. Rita?
Yes, ma'am, she's there.
So, Ms. Nirupama, over to you. The topic of presentation is addressing the impact of climate change on human security.
Thank you, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
Okay. So my topic is addressing the impact of climate change on human security. So as we all know, climate change is one of the greatest and most complex challenges that the international community has to deal with today and in the years to come. So research on the specific interaction of human security and climate change focuses on how cultural, demographic, economic, and political forces interact with direct and indirect climate change impacts affecting individuals and communities. Climate change is an important factor threatening human security through various ways, like undermining livelihoods, compromising culture and identity, increasing migration that people would have rather avoided, challenging the ability of states to provide conditions necessary for human security, etc. These four links between human security and climate change are identified by the IPCC that fit into the domains outlined by the four-pillar model. So many populations that are already marginalized, resource dependent, and have limited capital assets, human security will be progressively undermined as climate changes. So the complex causes and consequences of climate change require a comprehensive, integrated strategies that identify the entry points for collaborative action to mitigate its impacts on people. The IPCC AR5 scenario states that human security almost never has single causes, but instead emerges from the interaction of multiple factors. So several threats to the international stability and security have been identified, including the following ones, like conflict over resources, economic damage and risk to coastal cities and critical infrastructure, loss of territory and border disputes, environmental harms, disrupted access to and intensified competition over energy supplies. And climate change may significantly increase the instability in weak or failing states by overstretching their already limited capacity of governments to respond effectively to the challenges they face. And there will also be pressures on international governance. The multilateral system is at risk if the international community fails to address the threats outlined above. And there will be risk for global economic development and risk of growing international distributional conflicts between the main drivers of climate change and those who are affected. And the interaction between these threats mentioned intensifies the challenges for international politics and could cause a chain reaction with unpredictable consequences. And against the backdrop of globalization, climate change is likely to overstretch the capacities of a still insufficient global governance system. And state institutions already overstretched will come under additional pressure and will find it increasingly difficult to perform elementary state tasks. And climate change is also a threat multiplier and essentially human national and security risk because its potential to exacerbate many of the current challenges and threats already being faced in many countries. And it can contribute to instability, lead to displacement and migration, worsen existing conflicts, and threaten global security. So many developing countries, particularly the weak and poor states, have less capacity to prepare for and adapt to climate change with a flood or drought capable of causing instability and unrest. For example, climate change can contribute to food insecurity and increase the frequency and intensity of extreme weather events, which can lead to massive displacement or migration and conflict over food, water, land, and border disputes. This ultimately reflects the lack of security in the daily lives of people. And in the fifth assessment report, the IPCC addressed security and conflict for the first time by including a subsection on human security in the working group 2, contribution to the fifth assessment report on impacts, vulnerability, and adaptation. So it includes that climate change is projected to increase the displacement of people, resources, and extreme weather events in both rural and urban areas, particularly in low-income developing countries, and has the potential to increase the risk of violent conflicts such as civil war, intergroup violence, by exacerbating well-documented conflict drivers such as poverty and economic shocks. So climate change also impacts on the infrastructure and territorial integrity of states. And for example, land inundation due to sea level rise threatens the territorial integrity of small island states, countries with extensive coastlines. And while effective and strengthened national and intergovernmental institutions and strong governance at state level can help enhance cooperation and manage such conflicts, This is not always possible in case of weak or fragile states. So climate change can lead to a decrease in resources such as food, water, resulting in either fighting over resources due to increased scarcity or migration internally or across the borders. So regardless of the type and size of climate, type of country, climate change impacts are likely to have a disproportionate effect on poor countries with already weak governance structures and poor people in poor countries especially. So the major extreme weather events in the past have led to significant population displacement, and many vulnerable groups do not have the resources to be able to mitigate to avoid the impacts of flood, storms, and droughts. This planning is very critical, and the unexpected must be anticipated and prepared for adaptation actions and resilience building. As threats proliferate and become more diverse and the planet continues to warm,
Please sum up your presentation.
Okay, ma'am. Okay. The presence of robust institutions can manage many of these problems that human security is facing. And when it comes to the case of India, India is one of the largest emitters of greenhouse gases. And the governance mechanisms that we have is the National Action Plan on Climate Change. And we also have the State Action Plan on Climate Change. But the problem is that there are many voids in these institutional structures because there is lack of commitment to equity, redistribution of wealth and income in this super hierarchical society. And what we need is a more democratic and open discussion, and should try to develop policies by addressing its key failures that have happened in the past. And also by focusing on local self-governance based adaptation should also be promoted. And what we need is a right mix of top-down as well as bottom-up approach. Bottom-up approach is needed for meaningful outcomes for a climate policy. And to address the complex issues of human security, strong institutional mechanisms at all levels of governance are essential. Thank you.
Okay, Nirupama, thank you. A very important and very lively presentation. That is, essentially, you have focused on 3 points, 3 aspects: the linkage between human security and climate change. And secondly, you have tried to focus on the implications or impact of climate change. And thirdly, one modification or addendum I would like to draw your attention. That is, India is one of the largest emitter of greenhouse gases. This is only in recent years. Okay. So if you look at the history of last 300 years or so, who are the polluters? Who all created all these problems? So I think you need to just qualify this statement. Okay.
Okay.
Rest is very fine, and thank you. And over to Tanushri.
Thank you, sir.
Our next panelist is Saket Pandey. Mr. Saket Pandey, research scholar, University of Allahabad, Uttar Pradesh. Ms. Rita, the panelist has joined?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, Mr. Saket, you can continue. And the topic of presentation is understanding the interlinkages between energy consumption and human security, an empirical study.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon to all the panelists and the other participants who are present here. I am here to present my research paper, and the topic of my paper is understanding the interlinkage between energy consumption and human security and empirical study. So the relationship between human and energy consumption is not a new concept. In the present world a human society can't think of surviving without the use of energy. It started from the evolution of human being when it first learned the use of fire near about 2 million years ago. At that time it was used for warmth and safety purposes, but later on, as the world moved towards cultivation and industrialization, the consumption of energy tilted towards economic activities like use of minerals, fossil fuels, etc., rather than as a basic necessity of life, not only for economic aspect but also for household activities. The use of energy consumption grew rapidly. The sources used for these activities were basically conventional sources of energy, These energies were non-renewable by nature and often led to the socio-economical, environmental, and biological health problem in human society. If we talk about the present scenario, the economic and environmental impact of mismanaged energy consumption is a topic of constant discussion in a various academic and socio-activist forum. But while discussing it, the social and biological health issue often remain unnoticed. In the true sense, all these factors create the problem of human security in the society. The gases related by uh, motor vehicle engine and other sources besides resulting into environmental problems also tends a significant impact of human health. In the same way, the social issue like gender, poverty, population growth, etc., have also direct relationship with energy consumption. So, so in this paper, I have tried to ensure the interlinkage relationship between energy consumption and human security through the prism of socio-biological health factor. In the present study, the social approaches of energy consumption and human security will be examined through three major vulnerable issue of society. These are population, poverty, and gender aspect. First, we will talk about population. So the relationship between population and energy consumption is a very complicated one. 18% of the world's energy is based on fossil fuel that are non-renewable. IEA 2021. This directly indicates towards the fact that the abundance of energy is limited, but as we move towards population, though the world is going through a demographic transition and the population increase in control still is it grows by its nature. Hence, growth of energy consumption with the growth of population and a limited stock of energy sources are obvious region of energy crisis. As a result of energy crisis, the monetary value of fuel rises, and it also result in economic crisis, resulting underdevelopment in most of the cases. According to Holder 1991, there was nearly 20-fold increase in world energy use since 1850. The growth of world population in this period of responsible for 52% growth in energy consumption, while growth in per capita energy use was 48%. According to IEA report 2021, which argue that the highest growth rate of population is found in developing countries, and they are the one who faces difficulty in adaptation of renewable energies. So these facts indicate us towards the instant need of adopting renewable and affordable energy so that the future generation can uh, cope up with the issue like population growth and energy crisis, and like a better and secure life.
Mr. Saket, please conclude your presentation.
Yes, ma'am. Next, we will talk about poverty. The issue of poverty is based on economic phenomena. According to Pachauri, high level of poverty affects the pattern of energy consumption in terms of the equal quantity and quality of level of poverty. ठीक है सर, एक सेकंड कंक्लूड करते हैं. The third point is related to gender and poverty, and this is one of the most interesting concept regarding the relationship of energy consumption and human security. Actually, the energy policies are not based on gender equality. While men comes to contact with the bad energy consumption mainly at outside like industry, women are one who remains near the poor energy sources like cook stove or burning wood at their household all day long. The importance of energy in women's life is not only limited to kitchens but also in social.
Okay, Saket, we got it. Okay, since time is short, thank you, Saket. And you have actually tried to focus on diverse areas relating to the linkage between energy consumption and human security. According to me, it would have been better if your presentation was more focused on a particular area. Okay, but otherwise, you have tried to build up the linkage between essentially energy consumption and human security, that how over the decades or over the centuries, more energy consumption leads to more human insecurity. So thank you, Saket, and over to Tanushri.
So our next presenter is Ms. Vani Bharadwaj. Is she there?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Vani is postgraduate student, Indira Gandhi National Open University, New Delhi. And topic of presentation is Endangered Environment, Peace Building in Tibet, Northeast India and Bangladesh. Ms. Vani, due to paucity of time, please conclude your presentation within 5 minutes.
And Tanushri,
Yes,
can we request that one person, individual participant is video on? It is quite disturbing. Chinna Promise. Can we request him to switch off his video?
Okay. Chinna Promise, please switch off your video.
Yes, ma'am, I done it. No
Okay.
issue.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to present my paper So the research puzzles are that the how macro narrative of hydropolitics in the particular region of Tibet, Northeast India and Bangladesh impacts personal and community life of indigenous people. So I'm exploring the cross-cutting themes of gender, ecological security and ethnicity. So I have placed indigenous people in the decolonial and post-development discourse, and then my entire paper is divided into 3 parts: ecologizing a geopolitical space. Commodification of resource frontier has been witnessed since colonial times, and it has continued into the post-colonial state as well. And a multi-track and multilateral dialogue, that is the track 1.5, 2 and 3 diplomacy, are inadequate in incorporating the narratives of the subaltern. At the same time, we have to look at how hydro diplomacy should be gendered, and there's a comparative between Southeast Asia and South Asia that scholars have explored upon. And within that, the common theme is paucity of hydrological data and the inability to form a multilateral dialogue, because China refuses to create a dialogue that is beyond bilateral regarding hydrodiplomacy. So there is a realist analysis by Brahma Chilani, and he has securitized water and how hydropolitics is going to play a highly major role in the region. And therefore, there is need for gendered hydrodiplomacy regarding asymmetries of power and accessibility to water. There are great asymmetries, such as there are local elites. And therefore, I move on to my part 2, which is queering ecology and Dalit feminist political ecology. So there is a lot of literature on Dalit environmentalism or Dalit feminist separately. But when you conflate the two, that is Dalit feminist political ecology, we get to the point that we don't have to romanticize the subaltern, as pointed out by Gayatri Spivak and Gramsci and Ambedkar and Phule. Because once we look at how traditional ecological knowledge, that is the Brahmanical nature of traditional ecological knowledge, is deconstructed, once we challenge the casteism and the patriarchy, because patriarchy and casteism are traditions that need to be challenged. So yes, we have to include the voices of the subaltern and the local people and transnational and translocal voices in the dialogue to create a better gendered hydro diplomacy in the region. But we also have to understand ecology in a sense that does not exclude people. So therefore, Foucault comes in handy when he says that knowledge systems need to be deconstructed because disciplines are an act of violence. And when you put in particular categories, you have to see that there is no social exclusion occurring. And so we have to introduce non-duality in our systems thinking. And how do we do that? We do that by querying ecology. So when we say urban and rural, so there is always a transitional
You have
zone.
1 minute more.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. There's always a transitional zone between urban and rural, which is peri-urban, suburban. So we have to look at how ecofeminism, women environment development, and feminist political ecology are three paradigms through which we can look at the policies. But yet again, they fall short of entirely explaining how we will include the subaltern voices and at the same time not take in patriarchy and casteism along with us in putting traditional knowledge also into use for climate.
I think there is some problem with regard to presentation.
Actually, we are running short of time also, sir. So only 4 minutes to.
Okay, so thank you,
Vani
Varkha, and over to next.
Yeah. So next we have Chinna Promise for the presentation. The topic of presentation is State, Human Security and Sustainable Development in Nigeria.
Hello?
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible, but please stick to 4 minutes only.
No problems.
Yeah.
My paper is titled, from the title of the paper, I did a conceptual analysis of human security, the state, and sustainable development. But because of time, I'm not going to go into details on that. But suffice to say, for the past 21 years, there has been problem of crisis in Nigeria, in the political, academic, educational, in fact, in all sectors of Nigeria, because of lack of human security. The paradigm shift from conventional security to state security, from human security to conventional security or state security, created so many lacunas in Nigerian political system. And the human security has 7 components: economic security, food security, and environmental, personal, community, and political. And then the government of Nigeria has neglected the aforementioned security, which is basic or requisite for internal security. And then because of this, there's problem of militarism, militancy, kidnapping, herdsmen, and all other things, creating problems in the Nigeria political scenario. And then even the paper in the role of democracy. This paper made use of Aristotelian theory of state. Basically, state was formed basically for people's welfare and security. Unless when welfare and security are strictly adhered to and enabling environment created, there is no way human security can take place. The dramatic error is that Nigeria, we involve ourselves in international listing. We go for mediation, we go for arbitration, we go for conciliation in abroad. But coming from here, nothing is happening. You go to the southeast, the most speaking ethnic nationality in Nigeria, it's nothing to write home about. You come to my own side, the south, where we have the oil, militancy, kidnapping, all the way. You go to the northeast, herdsman rustling, cattle rustling, terrorism, bombing, and then this paper made use of
Now 1 minute more.
Okay, basically because of this, the paper made the following recommendation: that there should be a paradigm shift from conventional state security to human security, and that all those problems created as a result of lack of human security should be addressed. The political will, strong government, good environment, and enable the political will. Then it's on that note that we can say we have a starting point of how to pursue external security. Thank you, and God bless you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chinna. Since time is very short, you have made a good presentation on the status of human security in Nigeria. and you have tried to focus on the fact that sustainable development is the only means to promote human security. So with this, I think all presentations are over, Tanushri?
Yes, so all presentations are over.
So is there any time left for question answer, or should we wind up this session?
You have to wind up because at 1:15 we have the next session.
Oh, so already. So thank you all the participants. It's been a very interesting listening to you all, focusing on different aspects relating to human security and sustainable development. Even I got some inputs from your presentation, and I am also enriched. And thank you one and all. Over to Tanushri.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much all the participants with such an enlightening time. But but it was a really enlightening session focusing on sustainable development. Right. Thank you so much. Over to you, Nandini.
Thank you, thank you,
Thank you,
Nandini,
Professor Rajkumar Kothari, Professor Tanushri Purohit. Now, without delay, I want to start our next panel, that is panel 6 on women in governance and human security. Chairperson is Dr. Nima John, who is head of the Institute, Amity School of Communication, Amity University, Mumbai, and co-chairperson Dr. Kiran Walia, Associate Professor, Amity School of Communication, Amity University, Mumbai. Over to you, Nima ma'am. But before you start, just I want to say one thing, that we have only time left very short. So we have to complete this session by 3 at any cost, because at 3 we have a separate session and we have to start it on time.
Yes, Nandini, thank you so much. So we have around 16 participants, and I'd like to welcome all the participants, and thank you for inviting me, Nandini, for Women in Governance and Human Security. It's a very important, must say, topic of discussion today, and women in governance and human security is very integral to the development of the gender-centric, development today, and it's the topic is of prime importance. So we will proceed further with our first final panelist, who is Dr. Shashi Verma. Dr. Shashi Verma, you could please unmute yourself. Her topic is Domestic Violence Act 2005, Women, Human Rights.
I think ma'am, Shashi Verma is not here, so we can go for the next.
All right. So we will have a second panelist, who is Dr. Somdatta Banerjee, Assistant Professor.
Is also not here, I think.
Not here. So we would like to proceed with Madhuparna Datta.
Madhuparna is also not here.
Not there. Okay. Priyanka Marwa from Ludhiana, Punjab.
Yes. Priyanka, you are co-host now, so you can share your screen if you want.
So Priyanka, you have 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Actually, I'm just connecting my laptop with this. I was not prepared because all the three presenters are not available now, so I'm just connecting my laptop. I'll just take 1 or 2 minutes, ma'am.
No problem. No problem.
Right.
Then we can go for the next presentation, I think.
So do we have Dr. Kirat Grewal?
No.
Do we have Dr. Anjum Ara Shamim?
I think Imran will present that paper, right? Imran is a co-author, right?
Yes, Imran Ahmed Khan.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Imran, I am making a co-host. You can present the paper.
Imran, your topic is Half Widows in Kashmir, the Victims of Conflict in Society.
Exactly. Actually, I was connecting my laptop. Now I will switch to mobile. I was here through my mobile. So I will start for mobile. Sorry. Actually, 4 panelists were not here. Good afternoon to everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's actually, my topic is on half widows in Kashmir, the victims of conflict in society. So Actually, the armed conflict in Jammu and Kashmir have given rise to a category of women called half widows. These are women whose husbands have gone missing in the ongoing armed conflict of now it has been over 30 years now in the region. My paper presents a picture of economic, legal, social, and psychological implications of half widowhood in the cultural context of the region. It focuses on their experience of loss, ostracism, stigma faced by them, and their struggle for survival and justice. The sample paper was actually the sample of my paper was 12 half widows which I interviewed in Anantnag district and Srinagar district. The conflict involving arms is an omnipresent phenomenon. Since the dawn of the 21st century, armed conflicts have become more internal, long drawn, and complex, with civilian increasingly becoming the targets. Armed conflicts affect both men and women, but their respective experiences may differ at times significantly. The suffering of women often spreads beyond visible death and destruction. They may get directly targeted for rape, molestation, and torture. They may also suffer indirectly by being related to men. The indirect sufferings of women in armed conflict are usually long term, invisible, and often not acknowledged. The Kashmir conflict has borne a severe impact on women, both directly and indirectly. Their sufferings have been manifold. In context of conflict, we find a term that is forced disappearance, defined under Article 2 of United Nations Convention Against Torture as the arrest, detention, abduction, or any other form of deprivation of liberty committed by agents of the state or concealment of the fate of or whereabouts of the disappeared person, which place such a person outside the protection of law. In Kashmir Valley, the killings and disappearance of men due to the conflict have left behind a large number of women struggling for survival. It has been estimated that there are more than 20,000 surviving widows of armed conflict from all communities, whether it is Muslim or Pandits, anything, anyone,
Sorry
or
to
Sikhs.
interrupt you, but
Yeah.
you have 1 minute left.
Okay, fine. I will conclude.
Please
As such,
conclude it.
J&K Coalition of Civil Society has estimated that there are some 1,500 half widows, while others estimated the number 2,500 half widows of Kashmir conflict. Some of these ladies are very young in age. These victims of conflict are often called half widows and half wives because there are no proof of their husbands' death or any whereabouts of. That's why they are called half widows and half wives. They experience many experience of just like that of the widows. Their situation bears unique aspects. Besides their uncertainty about existence of their beloved ones, they don't get official or social recognition of their status, as there is no proof of husband's death. Under the circumstances, pressure mounts on the half widows to assume the role of breadwinners for their households. In the process, they struggle between new roles and responsibilities on one side and their vulnerabilities and deficiencies on the other. Legal implications are the poor and economic conditions of half widows often get severe by their disputed legal status, as there is no proof of missing person's death or any whereabout. The wife is often deprived of any monetary compensation benefits. Half widows encounter difficulties at different levels, that is in seeking pension, that is widow relief from social welfare departments, in seeking compensation from government for the victims of conflict, in seeking the share of husband's property, and in becoming the eligible for remarriage. Till yet the society, religion peers, yeah, or legal status has not gone through their status, and they have not got any compensation from any organization till yet, and there is no legal status whether they will be called half widows or widows, or they will be called or they will appear for they will get legal status for remarriage. We should give some compensation through our legal department so that they can remarriage or get some compensation from the government. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Imran. So sensitive issue you have raised and very well said.
Thank you.
So,
So Imran, I have one question.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, how
Yeah,
are you mapping the whole the sensitive issue? What is your
actually,
methodology?
this is my whole thesis on that. So because of the constraints, I have shared some of them.
Okay.
Listen, the half widows are not given social status events. They are still half widows. Our legal religious peers have told them that to wait for 90 years so that you will get the widowhood status. So they can't, they have to wait for 90 years to remarriage. We don't have that much age in this complex world. So now as far as government is concerned, they have told them to wait for 7 years,
Mhm.
7 years to get the status of widowhood, or to get compensation from government, or to apply for remarriage. Still there are cases pending before the high court or any court, of these half widows, so that they can get something
So are they
beneficial
also
for them.
allowed to educate themselves, Muslim women? Are they educated?
Yeah.
They are well educated.
Not these half widows. If I say there are 1,500 half widows, only there will be 200 who are well educated, so that only they can
I'm sure in
go
your
for
thesis
any.
you have considered all these variants and you have studied them
Yeah.
thoroughly, and
Yeah.
you've presented it. It is a very highly sensitive topic, as what Dr. Kiran has said, and it's thank you for sensitizing us with the concern of half widows. Thank you. So
Thank
we'll
you,
move
ma'am.
on with the
Thank you.
next candidate. And Priyanka Marva, are you ready with the presentation? Yeah, please. There's an audio issue. We're not able to hear you. So Priyanka is going to be presenting on apprehending the plight of women during the conflicts and a study of Khushwant Singh's Delhi, a novel.
Ma'am, am I
Right?
audible? Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
you are. Yes, please go ahead.
Esteemed members of the chair and my fellow research scholars, a very good afternoon to all of you. So the title of my paper is Apprehending the Plight of Women During the Conflicts, a study of Khushwant Singh's Delhi, a novel. So as we all know that conflicts and wars across the world ruin lives, families, infrastructure, and economy, but most importantly, it threatens gender security. It disproportionately affects the female class and makes them more susceptible to all kinds of violence and exploitation, especially the sexual violence by both enemy and friendly forces. And that is why it is believed that just like any gun or shell, sexual violence is also a weapon which is used in a war to go war as a weapon. It is a wound which destroys the identity and psychology of not just the women or her family, but also disgraces the men of her community who could not protect her. So the creation of patriarchy by Gerda Lerner, she establishes a fact that the agricultural societies were where the women were idealized as the bearers of cultural identity and viewed as the resources for producing food and children. Women's bodies were perceived as the territories to be conquered, since their capabilities of producing prompted the tribes to recognize their value of acquiring more women from the opposing groups. So therefore, the aim of this paper would be to analyze the novel from a feministic perspective and understand women's plight in a conflict or a warlike situation. Since the novel has not been studied from this perspective so far, therefore it will be a significant addition to the existing criticism. So Delhi, a novel, is a novel written by Khushwant Singh. It was his fourth novel published in 1990. The novel is based on the religious and political aspects that monopolized India and records the major historical events that have endowed Delhi with glorious past and tells the tale of becoming and unbecoming of Delhi. Moving on to the analysis of the novel. So the major female characters, there are 3 major female characters in the novel who fall victim to sexual violence during the conflict or a warlike situation in the novel: Alice Adwell, Lakshmi, and Anwarbai. Moving on to Alice Adwell. So she's a Kashmiri Muslim lady who sheds her Anglo-Indian identity by marrying an Englishman. Now, when the mutiny breaks out in 1857, her husband's English identity turns all the Muslim neighbors around her against her and her family. Things turn even worse when her English husband leaves her with other English families, leaving her and her daughters to the mercy of Mirza Abdullah, who takes full advantage of her and her daughters in the situation and calls Maulvi, who forces her daughters to convert into Islam. Now, since her daughters are projected as the bearers of English identity, converting them into Islam was like winning a battle against the English by Maulvi and Mirza Abdullah. Furthermore, Alice is forced to offer sex to Mirza Abdullah in exchange for her and her daughters' protection from the Muslim mob. It shows that how young girls and women become the primary victims during a conflict or a warlike situation where and Mirza Abdullah, who once used to call her as a sister, instead of protecting her, takes full advantage of her. So in this situation, Alice's body is seen as a territory for the men of Muslim community, which has to be won by the conquerors. Moving on to another example, which is Lakshmi. So Lakshmi is she is forced. Lakshmi is like a sister of Ram Rakha, who is kidnapped by.
Priyanka, your time left. No time left. I think you have to stop here only.
All right. Should I just go to the conclusion?
Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. So there are 2 other women, Lakshmi and Anwarbai. They too face similar situations. So coming to the conclusion, the research findings indicate that the text under study affirms that men brutally assaulted and suppressed the female characters, and they have been reduced to a mere sexual object in all these 3 examples. So that is it, and these are the references, and thank you.
It was a good presentation, Priyanka, and congratulations on that. Due to time constraints, we are not going into the semiotics and the semantics of the study that you have done and the methodology, but do keep in mind that when you're presenting, what is your framework and how have you analyzed the content and with what context should be there. Your conclusion is very quite clear in terms of the presentation that you have rendered out here. So congratulations and thank you. We can proceed with the next candidate.
Ma'am, Chinmay is not here.
Okay. Okay, Chinmay is not here. So can we have Unku Kairunisa, Dr. Unku from Malaysia? Kairunisa is there with us?
Yes.
Okay, so we may proceed with Kairunisa.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm Unku Kairunisa, or you can call me Nisa for short. I'm from Malaysia, specifically from University Technology Malaysia. So basically, my paper is on self and other representations of female sympathizers of ISIS. Okay, without further ado, I'll just go straight to the introduction, which is the start of ISIS. Since June 2014, the international group starts, which is it started since June 2014, and also the concept of foreign fighters, and also the concept of muhajirah. What is muhajirah? Muhajirah are basically those women who chose to be part of ISIS and they migrate from other countries. Okay, next, I'm going straight to the research problem. So the focus group is ISIS. ISIS is known for its extensive use on effective use of propaganda, and I'm scoping it down to just focusing on the female sympathizers. Who are they? Basically, they are women supporting ISIS, and they are, as we can see, more active than any other woman in other militant group previously. Okay, what am I looking at? Basically, I'm looking at the media, how these female sympathizers are represented in and by the media. because the media is reflective of the ideologies and the threat that ISIS poses to the world. Okay, going on, besides that, I also look at the social media whereby these women represent themselves. Why? Because this is the first group that we managed to get tweets from. All right, so they have the power and agency to actually present themselves as opposed to what is represented by the media. Okay. Now going to jump into this. This is a structure of my thesis. Basically, two main questions. The first one is how these female sympathizers represent themselves in the social media. Where do I look for the answers to this? Twitter postings. Next, how media discourses represent these female sympathizers. I divided this into two, which are first the global media. As we can see, there are a few from the Star and the Figaro Madam, and also ISIS affiliated media, the media from themselves, which are their manifesto and also Al-Risalah and a few of ISIS Dabiq magazines, only focusing on sections of women. All right. I have three research questions, which are how do the global media represent ISIS sympathizers? How do ISIS affiliated media represent the female sympathizers? And how do female ISIS sympathizers represent themselves? Okay, bear in mind, my discussion follow the concept of self and other representation. So in this, we believe that, according to Wardell, we believe that the us will always imply positive information about ourselves and also talk about negative information about the other. All right, same goes. We suppress positive information about.
You are please running short of time.
All right, suppress negative information about us. Okay.
Please conclude it.
To the conclusion, so what do I found? Basically, there are a lot of complementing and contesting discourses. For example, in the points as women as wives, from the tweet, we can see that they love to become wives of ISIS fighters. But in the ISIS affiliated media, we can see that all these wives will be taken as widows. They will end up as widows and will be taken care in the concept of polygamy. So they are taken care of. However, in the global media, mentions that these widows are not lonely, are just lonely and not taken care of, and they will be used as sexual objects. So there are many contesting discourses if we look at these three together. Okay, another one would be, for example, in the global media, they mentioned that the muhajiras are treated as slaves, but in the ISIS media denies this by saying that they are not slaves. They are just, so basically, in the global media, they mentioned that they are tortured and abused, these women, but ISIS media denies it by saying that they are kindly treated and they might die or become widows, but in the ISIS media denies this as well. We can see this clearly in all the discourses going around both global and also ISIS media. So what is the importance of this study? Basically, we can see that this terrorist group is ISIS is a site that allows contestation between these three different medias, right? It's able to analyze the different subjectivities and agencies given to these female sympathizers. As you can see, when they want to talk about themselves and fighting for ISIS, they will always praise ISIS. However, in the global media, is a different thing. And if you can see in the tweets, there are things that they agree and disagree with ISIS as well, which makes it more interesting. And nonetheless, this is important to help establish counter narratives that suits these women based on their social, cultural, and political context. Since they come from different countries, we might have to consider where they come from and the social, cultural, and political context from where they come from. Okay, I think that's all because I cannot fit in everything. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, it was a very brave attempt, Khairunisa, to have presented yourself and other representatives of ISIS. And but then we needed a little bit more clarity on the differentiation that you're trying to make between the global media and the ISIS media, and what is your standpoint, and how do you wish to conclude, your topic. So please work on that and bring. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe because of time constraints, it did not come across effectively. But it is a great topic and what you have chosen. But then we would like to know your standpoint. You know, you're trying to. I mean, the clarity has to come in terms of the issues that you're raising. You know, it should come through your study. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. There are no parameters. The parameters that you're using here, that they needs to be clarified, and the results also. Okay, like have you evaluated the tweets? Have you? I mean, what was your questionnaire? What was the analysis and all that? Are you getting my point, Karunisa?
Yes.
Yeah. So how have you
Yeah.
evaluated the medium, and what results have you got? Okay, so please make it a little more specific. Yeah. So we can move on with the next. Is Ekta Mishra with us today?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So Ekta, you can unmute yourself. Ekta is presenting. Ekta is a scholar from University of Allahabad, Uttar Pradesh, and she's going to be presenting her topic on women empowerment through khadi industries, trends and prospects. So yeah, Ekta.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, one and all. Thank you, ma'am, for this opportunity. My regards to respected hosts, chairpersons, co-chairpersons, and the participants. My topic, the topic of my presentation is women's empowerment through khadi industries, trends and prospects. As you said, ma'am, I would like to share my screen with everybody. Ma'am, is it visible? One sec. Yeah. Is it visible, the screen?
Yes, it is visible.
Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am. This is the topic. So everything is related to everything. With this knowing, I would love to state that women empowerment is not a concern of any limited section, but it is linked with every individual section, event, and everything that is going around in the society. As through the slide, I will like to show this interrelationship between everything. Like women, they are interlinked with, they influence male and female counterparts that they meet in their day-to-day lives, and they are homemakers. They are raising the future generations, and that we see the influence of their influence in the future generations. And then we see that women are office bearers too. So we see that they frame a set of mindset in colleagues and employers. Wherever they go, they they make a mark of their own. And then there are social individuals that influence, that tend to give their understanding and influence society. So with this, I can say that all the participants that interact with women are influenced by them, and vice versa. So hence, I would love to state that women empowerment is the empowerment of a society in whole. So in my understanding, to reach this stage where every woman is empowered in real sense, whether social, economic, or political, we need approaches that target each and every individual strategies such as microfinancing, capability, and social security, market-based and good governance strategies can be taken into account to reach this goal. Ms. Veena Majumdar, a pioneer in women's studies, suggests that women equality and development is possible by providing them opportunity to participate and monitor. The third slide shows that women empowerment struggles with poverty eradication. Means by poverty eradication, we can reach up to women empowerment, and secure social setup can be very helpful to reach the goal. Now we see, as we have discussed, the social, economic, and political aspects of it influence the women empowerment, so to say. Now the third next slide, which shows my analysis, the key observations that I have reached, and there are many more besides these, but because of the time constraint, I would like to highlight some points. Like historically, Khadi channelized women participation in Swadeshi movement. Like in Swadeshi movement, Khadi was a main sector where women participation was possible because of this Khadi movement. Now, male and female participation gap is seen in the Khadi industries, and rural-urban participation gap is also seen therein. So women are segregated more in weaving sectors. The Khadi industries are divided into weaving and spinning sectors. So women are more into weaving sectors and not in the spinning sectors. It is highlighted that 82% of women are in this Khadi industries working, but they are only limited to these sectors, and these limitations are worth pinpointing. Now I have come to the point that external factors hinder women employment very much. There can be two factors, permanent and temporary. Permanent may be household responsibilities and social stigmas that are attached to with several others, and temporary but of wide impact has recently seen in pandemic like COVID-19. Now I would come to the prospects. I see women as their own prospects in every sense, if given the tools and opportunities to them in their hands. So inculcating sense of security in women to get rid of dependency cycle that they usually find themselves stuck in. And the third point I would like to point is finding ways to channelize women potential. I believe that women has a very strong point of their own only, but if we are able to channelize their potential in great ways. Now, to conclude my point, I would just want to say that governance and security in this can be a very effective tool in the women emancipation and women empowerment. And if we have a gender balanced institutional setup, we can see that women could participate easily, and we can sensitize the other sections of the gender that really needs to be sensitized through there. Finally, women taking their destiny into their own hands can be very deciding point in building and empowering our women. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your observations and your presentation. You correctly said that women empowerment through the entrepreneurs and gender equality also playing role at the grassroots level. We should emphasize on that. That migrating is one another problem for the urban spaces. So definitely, very rightly said. So I will invite next speaker, Ekta Mishra.
Oh, it was Ekta Mishra.
No, it is Ekta Mishra.
Sorry.
And yes, very well pointed out, Dr. Kiran. Migration is, every woman is a migrant, frankly speaking, be it in India or across, across the globe. So these issues are very hard-pressing issues, but very well presented by Ekta Mishra, the current trends and prospects. But my question is, why if, Ekta? We don't have to say that, I have a problem with the word that you said, if women, if this can happen, I think
No, ma'am, this is happening. I
line that
agree.
you said that women should
Yes,
become the
ma'am.
destiny in their hand, and
Yeah,
they need to be strong decision makers and believe in themselves and be confident.
yes, ma'am.
We
Sure,
have
sure, ma'am.
Saroj Gupta waiting for next, I think. Dr.
Yes.
Saroj Gupta.
Yes. Saroj Gupta is a lecturer with Vibhuti Narayan Government Inter-College, Gyanpur, Badoi, Uttar Pradesh, and her topic is Women Rights in India with special reference to legal framework and policy issues. So Ekta, you can stop the screen share, please.
शेयर दीजिए दी, हम ऐसे ही बोलते रहे हैं. हेलो Hello.
Dr. Gupta, we can hear you, and you please settle down and please start presenting your presentation.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yeah, we are hearing you.
1 minute, ma'am.
You can unmute yourself by the time.
1 minute, ma'am. 1 minute, ma'am.
Yeah.
1 minute, ma'am.
जूम जो चल रहा था कहाँ कर दी तुम?
मैम
या
ऑनलाइन थी तुम ना, आवाज चल रही है?
हाँ.
You can unmute by the time you are settling.
वो नहीं है, वो तो प्रेजेंटेशन है.
Ma'am, 1 minute, ma'am. Sorry, ma'am. There is technical issue. I will call you, ma'am. Ma'am, please give me some minute.
Okay. So we can call next participant by the time she is settling herself.
Okay, ma'am. Okay,
we can call Radhika Mittal from Banasali University, Rajasthan. If Miss Radhika is present here.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Radhika, are you ready with your presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Because we can later call Saroj ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, if Radhika is ready for the presentation, we can hear you first. Dr. Gupta, you can unmute and please off the camera. Dr. Saroj Gupta, I request you to please, if you are not presenting, we are running short time so that another participant can present by the time. So Radhika Mittal, I request you to can on the camera and please present your presentation.
Good afternoon.
Very good afternoon to you.
All present here. Today, my topic is women's security and governance.
So we cannot hear you. Can you please be a little louder? There is some issue with some mic. Little louder so that we can hear you.
So when we talk about women's security has remained a complicated issue over so many years. Instead of various governmental schemes and initiatives for the security of women, one is unable to secure them on a number of occasions. Women constitute almost half of the population of the country, so their security is significant for the welfare of nation. As we see, prior to independence, women has experienced different phases of their status. Previously, as we see in the ancient times, women were highly respected. They experienced a prestigious position, and they were treated as deity. They were man was incomplete without their presence with them. No religious function was performed without them. And in present times, if we see in all the fields of life, whether it is political, social, economic, किसी भी फील्ड में अगर हम देखें तो women जो है बहुत आगे बढ़ रही है, लेकिन आज भी एक ऐसा controversial issue बना है women security का.
Radhika, please talk in English. We can't allow Hindi here because we have more than 50 participants from abroad.
Okay, ma'am. Sorry. So, if we talk about women's security, it has remained a controversial issue even after so much political, social, economic empowerment of women, and in spite of various governmental initiatives to protect her, we could not protect her from the social perspective. Even if we have so many legislations, we have all the laws in India as well as in international documents. We have Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We have conventions. We have Convention on the Security of Women, on elimination of all sort of discrimination against women. We have all types of agendas, all types of laws we have framed to protect women. But still there is a question that why women's security is not still present? Why women is afraid to come out of her house even today? Why working women, even the working women could not experience a sense of security. If they are said to, if they means wanting to do a job, they have to think first whether the parents will allow or not. That is a big question, and the governance has failed. That means the governance has really failed to empower them on this front, that how to secure them. We have all the schemes, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, working women's hostel, all we have done. But still, nowadays we are facing all kind of molestation, rape, molestation, and in UP, we see UP. I will conclude myself. UP in UP we see the most kind of rape cases and molestations. So how we can stop this? This is a kind of policy.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Miss Radhika. Please keep your camera steady so that we cannot be diverted from the content, because it is continuously vibrating and the screen is not still. So you have to make yourself still and
Oh, sorry, ma'am.
keep it at one place so that, and the view is also, your face is not visible. So I would request you to please be steady and straight in terms of presentation.
Okay, so this is a big problem. So how I would like to then sort out certain problems, that women security, the first thing is women is themselves not aware about their problem, that how we can secure women. Women need to understand that they can protect themselves on their own. First of all, we have to allow them to keep security mechanism with themselves, so that when they wait for somebody else to protect them, before that they could just protect themselves from the security mechanism. We can allow them to learn such activities like judo, karate, and all, so that they can protect themselves, even if the government machinery is not capable of protecting them.
Okay,
And
are you done with
on the part of governance?
Can you please speak out about the abstract in the kind of a crisp and summarized form, because we are running short of time.
Okay, ma'am. So I just want to say that we need to really introspect in how we can protect women from such kind of violence and molestation, because women's security is still on a lapse in spite of government initiatives and government empowerment schemes. We have been unable to protect women from such kind of violence and molestations. So, ma'am, this was all about.
Okay, thank you. If Ms. Vijaya Kumari is present here. Ms. Vijaya Kumari from research scholar from Department of Social Work, Vishwa Bharati University, West Bengal.
Yes, ma'am. She is available here.
So, Vijaya, can you please present, or are you ready with or should I call someone else?
Hello.
Yeah, it's.
Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yeah. Are you ready with the presentation?
Okay. I want to share my slide, but it's showing disable share.
Just wait a minute.
Yeah, by the time we can say, like, yours topic is women's participation in the governments in Manipur.
Now you can share your screen. Thank you.
Okay. Ma'am, is it visible? Hello?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay, okay. So, thank you for giving me this opportunity to present my paper. So, my topic is on the women's participation in governance in Manipur. And I am Yumna Kumari from Department of Social Work, Vishabharati University, West Bengal, India. And so let's go through a basic introduction about Manipur and their women's. So Manipur is known for its high status of women and their high status of women and their courage. They have always come forward in every sphere, let it be economic, political, or social field, and they act as a social catalyst. And the manifestation of their virtues, qualities, and attributes are evident, which shows through the involvement and participation in the set field, that is in their family, social matters, and economic, political, and employment, and even in sports and culture, which I can give an example of Mary Kom and other eminent women are also there, such as Iom Sharmila, who has given that she went through a hunger strike for around a decade against the Armed Forces Special Power Act. But this mere idealism and symbolism of womanhood under the patriarchy rules make a little sense about their they have been put in the in high status in regards and well respected, but the same is not been seen in the while making a decisive response, decision make while in the platform of decision making, that is political responsibility or ownership. So these things are all controlled by the male folks or the male patriarchal counterparts. So this the women of Manipur, they are facing this they have been deprived or they have been silenced in terms of their political representation. So this paper tries to understand the situation of Manipur women in the governance and what challenges they are facing. So their participation of women, Manipuri women in politics. So from the earlier time, like in the historical time during the monarch's time, the queen or the princess of Manipuri women, they have contributed in the fields of social and social fields and in decision making also. They have ruled at that time. But nowadays, this whole concept or the power have been replaced by the unfavorable and discouraging family and social norms, which restrict the Meitei woman to a mere and mute voters of the state. Even we can see that the first MLA was appointed elected in 1972 only, and ever since then there is only a few countable numbers of candidates or the women MLAs. But though the male counterparts are not allowing them to be their competitors in this regard, but their participation in relation to franchise power, the voting turnouts, the women have turned out more than the male, which can be seen from each and every elections. And what are the social factors or that restrict or the women towards this participation in their governance in the state? So with us, there is a strict.
You have already exceeded the time, Vijaya.
Okay.
Please
Okay.
kindly conclude
I'll
in
just
1 minute if you can.
Okay. So I would like to conclude my presentation that that the political equality guaranteed by our Indian Constitution is not able to penetrate deeply in the social root in spite of many policies and programs of the government. Like for example that 33% of women should be like there is a minimum participation of 33% at grassroots level, but it's not been followed. Only we can see around 6% women are there, and but and still this psyche has been along with the women that they are inappropriate in the political role. So this psyche needs to be changed. So with this, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you, ma'am, and thank you all.
Thank you so much. Your data and your research is realistic. It sounds realistic and you presented it well. I would like to invite next participant. Dr. Anjum Ara Shamim.
Ma'am, it's Dr. Sanjita Varsi. I'm going to present this paper.
Okay, the impact of pandemic and lockdown of women.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, please go ahead.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So focus of my talk is impact of pandemic and lockdowns on women. Why I have chosen this topic, because and especially I have chosen Kashmir as a case study, because Kashmir is a very, very interesting case. It is subject to frequent lockdowns, and during pandemic, this situation actually becomes more intense. So lockdowns are not specific to pandemics only when it comes to Kashmir. My paper actually is trying to address two very, very important questions. First, what is the impact of lockdown on the lives of women of Kashmir? And second, when it comes to good governance and human security, how responses like lockdown to COVID-19 have a differential impact on the lives of men and women in the same society. Lockdowns are taken as the tool of governance. And when we talk about human security, it is inclusive of both men and women. When we talk about equality, treating people as equal demands to do justice to the differences, men and women have differential needs. And therefore, my submission is that there is a need to do justice to the differences. What is the methodology I have opted for? This is, I have employed both quantitative and qualitative. Coming to the qualitative part, to understand the impact of current pandemic, questionnaire has been used with ethnographic, open-ended interviews of the women randomly selected among medical staff and patients. With the purpose, I have selected these two categories because these were the people who could not avoid getting out of their houses, even in strict lockdowns. Medical staff is a part of essential services, so anyhow they have to go to their work. My sample size was 100 women that were 50 each from medical patients. These were from married, unmarried group, rural, urban areas belonging to nuclear and joint families. And with that, they were coming from the age group between 25 to 60. This study was conducted in the month of October 20. The districts which I have taken into consideration were Srinagar, Ganderbal, Shopian, Kulgam, Anantnag, and Pulwama. From both category, rural and urban. The definition of feminism or gender which I'm subscribing is that gender is a set of socially and culturally constructed characteristics assigned to individuals on the basis of their biological sex. It creates a structure that signifies unequal power relationship between women and men and between men and women. And of course, this asymmetrical power relationship contributes to the subjugation and discrimination of women and men. These are the characteristics which are assigning to masculinity and femininity. Independent, public, rational, male are considered like that, and women are dependent, private, and emotional. Fools at times, of course. Society and conflict in Kashmir. Like other society in India, Kashmir is also a deeply patriarchal society. In a conflict-affected society, like Kashmir, women have access to limited socio-political rights, though also assign so many rights to women. When it comes to structural cultural aspect, norms and values legitimizes cultural structural violence against women that become more intense during pandemic. COVID-19 lockdown, what was its impact on women? Countrywide lockdown was announced on 24th March 2020, but Kashmir almost experienced 1 year lockdown as lockdown was imposed on August 5, 2019 after the abrogation of Article 370. As I already mentioned that Kashmir is subject to frequent lockdown, so this was not something new which occurred to Kashmir. The impact on the poor, especially women and children, were extensive. Employment, health condition, access to food and amenities were on decline, and at the same time, domestic violence against women was all-time high. There was a time when High Court had to take a suo motu cognizance of the negative impact of the lockdown and directed subordinate courts to treat cases of domestic abuse on urgent basis. The Government Social Welfare Department reported 16 rape cases and 64 molestation cases in J&K during the first COVID-19. We all understand that no data is accurate and perfect, and sometimes government do not reveal certain data. Due to lockdown, supplies of healthcare products suffered and reach of the women to healthcare services affected. Life-saving medicines were short in supply and pregnant women had to travel long distances on foot because of lack of transport. There were certain cases just in the beginning of the month, 2 women and 2 newborn twins died due to alleged negligence of doctors in the second month of lockdown because these were from COVID-19 red zones. Structural violence occurred due to lack of food, nutrition, medical care that rendered women more vulnerable and insecure, and the lockdown made access to reproductive health care very difficult. In Anantnag, a doctor and a nurse was suspended after the death of a woman and her unborn child because of alleged delay in treatment. It shook all who watched the video of the deceased carrying the body out of the hospital on a trolley because of the strict lockdown and lack of transportation in the valley. What were the findings of this particular study? 76% women experienced increased work during lockdown, while only 34% women could only get support from their spouses. Among women patients, 82% women found it difficult to reach hospital, whereas 18% women had to wait for the relaxation period during lockdowns. It's about the patients. 64% women complained that they were stopped by police and other forces in their way to hospitals, and 42% found it difficult to tell these forces about the nature of their illness. 82% women reported reluctance of doctors in attending them during COVID-19 lockdown. 84% of patients replied in affirmative when asked whether there was a negative impact on the economy of their houses, and in turn, it had a negative impact on their health. Among medical staff, both doctor and attendants, 84% women felt that attending their duties were very difficult during lockdown. 64% women felt that they were not in control of their life. Yes, please.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but your time is already you have exceeded. If you can
I'm just sticking to the points only, and of course, when you ask to present a research paper,
4 minutes are for all the participants, so other participants are also waiting for. So if I give extra time
so
to
I'll
you,
directly come to conclusion.
Yeah, please do that. I'm really sorry to interrupt in between, but I have to be like that only.
All right, no problem. So we are talking about good governance, and states are responsible to provide security to citizens, and Indian government also tried to protect citizens from the pandemic by imposing countrywide lockdown. We are trying to make sense of lockdown. Lockdown was considered a human tool, and police force was used to raise the cost of non-compliance. Maximum desired output could be achieved. Though lockdown during COVID-19 was meant to bring security, it resulted in the enormous suffering of poor migrant workers and women. So when we are putting our gender-sensitive lenses, this perspective on lockdown during COVID-19 sensitizes us about the differential suffering of women and asks to revisit the concept of security. The finding of this study is a reflection of a particular context, that is the ongoing conflict situation in Kashmir. The analysis of the present data could not help in bringing about generalization about the women experiences, as these women are affected differently on the basis of their position in the society. These women are not a homogeneous group, and diversity in terms of age, literacy, space, structure of their family, and workplaces result in heterogeneous experiences. Educated women from good economic background and nuclear families have different issues and compulsion than illiterate women from rural areas. Where these women are located, their situatedness, whether in terms of structure, culture, space, area, in the society affects their lives differently in the same conflict area society. Though generalization may not be achievable on the basis of small data, but it certainly helps in understanding the agony for majority of the women in Kashmir. That was not, all of it. So, but then thank you for giving me this time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sanjida.
So are we done? Shall I unmute myself? Okay.
Yeah, please. Yeah, Dr. Amrita Banerjee, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am, I'm ready.
Okay. We welcome you for the seminar.
Thank you, ma'am.
Please go ahead.
Shall I start?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. A very good afternoon, first of all, to the organizers, organizing committee members, respected chairperson, ma'am, and co-chairperson, ma'am, of the session. Now, the topic on which I'm going to speak on today is ongoing pandemic and its impact on on the horizon of women trafficking in India, a reflection on sustainable development. Now, in today's presentation, basically, I am supposed to examine and understand the effect and impact of the outbreak of novel coronavirus, aka COVID-19, and the nexus among the pandemic human security with a kind of a special emphasis, you can say, on women trafficking, because trafficking as a whole is a very sensitive issue. And in Indian perspective, I'm going to speak on taking into account some of the historical backdrop, and which is very noteworthy, and a bird's eye view on a kind of a sustainable development. Now, some months before, or almost, we all know that almost all the countries, they were being self-isolated or were self-isolating due to the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic. And as a world was becoming more and more isolated with the enemy, the new enemy of the human being was directly, it was drumming on the three key rudiment now of human security, and definitely which is related to human development. Now, what are they? They are health, education, and income. Now, as we all know, that sustainable development is a kind of a development which helps in achieving a kind of a basic need of the common without hampering the needs of the future generations. Now, government, we all know that, however, have achieved a kind of a consensus in support of this development, and however, they have periodically, they have pledged to carefully formulate the kind of a policies for such kind of development without any compromise with the environment. And poverty and health possesses a kind of a direct, it possesses a kind of a direct relationship with the environment. And so when the poverty level decreases, we all know that it decreases the conditions of the common, and thus the kind of a degradations takes place with the environment, taking simultaneously it takes place. And as poverty increases, the family members, they set their children to the world as a kind of a laborers in between many who get trafficked. Now, a segment of the society has become unemployed. The specter of hundreds of thousands of migrant laborers in India, we know that walking on foot for hundreds of miles to reach their home, and they crushed their inner self, and they were more disposed to, commit different kind of crimes, and thus making it kind of a susceptible group, their prime victims. So hence the nexus among the pandemic, human security is very much somewhere or other, it is very much noteworthy. Now, the framework of sustainable development, goal 4, which encapsulate the notion of education for all. And here the stress has been basically laid on the need of the younger generation to receive, complete their basic education including their pre-primary level. But we have to think that there still exist some villages in India where the villagers, they can't dream about a square meal a day. So alone, the electric lights, it cannot drive away the darkness. So where even the basic education remains an elusive dream for them. So we have to think about it. Now, human trafficking, to me, I'm not going into the definition which has, we know that propounded by the United Nations and all. But to me, if somebody asks me what is human trafficking, I will say like human trafficking is a crime of crimes, and it is an organized crime which involves within itself a host of crime. Now, so we can understand that it is a kind of something which is distinct from any other crime. And because it is a basket of crime which comprises various offenses, for example, illegal confinement, we can say, criminal intimidations, torture in the form of hurt, sexual assault. We all know that outraging the modesty, that also falls into it. Rape, unnatural offenses, selling and buying of human being, that is there. So these are the thing. For that reason, we consider it it's a basket of crime. Now in India, we all know that a large number of women, they are being trafficked, and that's not only for the sex trade, but also for any other forms of the non-sex based exploitations, which can include the servitude of various kinds of like domestic labor, industrial labor, it can be agricultural labor, begging, and it can also include the false marriages. Now, I will take up just a statistical report from the NHRC, the National Human Rights Commission, and some of the NGOs with whom somewhere or other I also work with. So according to the report of NHRC, in India, the populations of women and children in sex work is about 70,000 and 1 million, of which 30% are basically 20 years of age. And nearly 15%, they began their sex work when they were only of 15 and 25% entered between 15 and 18 years. So a rough estimate has also been prepared by various NGOs, which says that 2 million prostitutes in India, there are around 2 million prostitutes are there in India, and 20% amongst them are minors. So you have to understand that this ratio, how much it has increased during the time of pandemic, because that graph or statistics is not there presently with the government personnel or neither with the NGOs, because it's not possible to keep the record. Now, keeping in mind, I'm just going to take one instance from the historical backdrop, and then I will conclude that we all know that, it is not uncommon in the history of India when we studied, while we were also students, that the rulers, they often used to brought the women in their courts for their own entertainment from, far away lands. And it is also the custom, basically, it is known as harem protha. So like in harem in the Mughal period, there were like many women, those who used to stay just to serve the king. And often the king, married the woman of the harem, but in this, harem, no other man was allowed. Only the king, they used to access the harem. And history also reveals that how people who dared to love the woman from the harem of the king were punished. So if somebody was caught accessing the harem of the king, in the absence of the defaulter, they were being punished. And not only that, often the shackles were being put around their hands and foot, and so that the people could not dare to try to access the harem in the absence of king. But there is some, why I have used this, because from this harem protha, the symbolic ornament that we wear after getting married, that is symbolic ornament like vermilion and shakha pola, it is a custom which got popularized in the form of wearing this vermilion and shakha around the wrist to signify that you are marked, like that is a marked status. Now, this symbol of inaccessibility becomes a major tool at the hands of those who run the business of women trafficking. And basically, they force the women to wear these symbols while they could easily move around with them, and on reaching their consumer, they could very easily they could sell them off. Now, so you can very well understand. So now I would just like to conclude by saying that in everywhere people talk about, like, to card the process of trafficking, we need a kind of support all over from the police person, mainly from the police personnel, from the government's law. But we have to think it very practically, because alone these people cannot make a kind of a change. These are only the instruments to take care of. And what we need is lots of debate and discussions that should be made, and discourse on the matters with a timeline, preferably it should be distributed, which we often don't do. And it should be distributed evenly over the concerned subject, along with the requests and suggestions, recommendations. We can also take specific notifications. Then the lots of clarity can come out, and it can make a kind of a change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amrita.
Thank you, ma'am.
Nima, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, please, if you have any observations or...
We have 2 more papers to go, ma'am. Are they coming? Ishita Ray and Gauri.
Ishita is not here. She messaged me. She went for some official work.
How about Dr. Gauri? Dr. Gauri Naren Mathur. The Unheard Voices, a case study of girl-child soldiers in Congo. Yes, Gauri,
one more presenter is asking for allowing her, Saroj Gupta.
Dr. Gauri is here. Dr. Gauri, I can see.
Yes, ma'am, I'm present. And
yeah. And Dr. Saroj, will she be coming back?
Yes.
Okay. So you can proceed, Dr. Gauri, and Amrita, I will get back to you. Okay. Towards the end, we'll talk about, we'll reflect on all the papers. Okay. Yeah. Yes, Gauri.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, chairpersons, and good afternoon, organizers. The title of my paper is The Unheard Voices, a case study of girl-child soldiers in Congo. The armed conflict across the globe has embroiled a lot of children in the quagmire of violence, and these civil wars have produced millions of child soldiers. They are providing their services in the armed militias as frontline workers, suicide bombers, human shields, scouts, porters, guards, messengers, etc. During the past 15 years, the recruitment of child soldiers has extended to most part of the world, particularly in the countries like Uganda, Afghanistan, Colombia, East Timor, Democratic Republic of Congo, etc. According to an estimate by United Nations, around 3 lakh child soldiers are entrapped in the civil wars, out of which 40% are girls, whose voices have often been ignored, as it is assumed that these girls serve in the shadow armed units. However, most of these girls are recruited as frontline soldiers, cleaners, cooks, porters, etc. In fact, some of these girls are also subjected to forced marriages to the chiefs of armed militias, and some of them are also forced to become their sex slaves. According to an estimate by Human Rights Watch, around 30,000 Congolese children are forcefully recruited by these armed militias, out of which 12,000 are girls who age from 7 to 12 years. In the armed forces, they are subjected to all sorts of gender inequalities, and they face a lot of instances of gender-specific brutality. Most of these girl child soldiers are considered as commodities, and they are given as remunerations or sexual properties. They are given as remunerations sometimes to these to the soldiers of these armed militias. They are also presented as the wives in case of the militias like LRA, and they are also forced to kidnap other child soldiers, etc. These girl child soldiers are frequently forced to undergo organized sexual abuse and rape. Besides gender-based inequality and gender-centered brutality, they face a major threat of death at the time of their gestation and childbearing. Particularly, these threats and health hazards multiply or get intensified in the war-torn environment. Most of these girl child soldiers have to face peculiar psychological damage, which includes the loss of their family and the loss of their dignity. The girl child soldiers are confronting the combined effect of being both girl and child soldiers, who are usually forgotten and misinterpreted. Some of them are compelled to do the odd jobs in the armed units, so that the boy child soldiers can focus on the much important jobs, including giving the instructions on how to do the warfare. Recruitment is an essential part of the child soldiers. So the 2/3 of the girl child soldiers in Congo are being kidnapped and abducted by the armed groups, while other 1/3 are being recruited on voluntary basis. The practice of this kind of the practice of employment generally relies upon the type of the armed group. For instance, Mai is a local armed militia which basically goes for recruitment on voluntary basis, while other groups such as LRA focus much upon the recruitment through abduction. So in case of the voluntary employment, why these girls for voluntary employment, that can be studied under 4 heads. So number one, there is their need for security and protection. So in order to get away from the conditions of grim attacks on their families and communities, these girls are left with no other option but to join the armed forces, so that they can get protection from and their families can get protection from being dehumanized or attacked by the armed militias. Secondly, some of these girls, and most of the times their parents also encourage these girls to join the forces in order to get protection from these armed militias. Secondly, most of the girls who have joined these armed forces are the ones who have dropped out from the school since they are not able to pay the fees of their schools, and their parents believe that instead of wandering here and there, it is better that they join the armed forces. Most of these girls are followed to their schools by the people of these armed militias, and they are offered some good amount of money, and so they agree to join these armed forces. The third important aspect is that of revenge, and most of these girls join these armed forces voluntarily in order to take revenge on the soldiers of these armed militias who were involved in the dehumanization of their families, or in attacking them sexually or committing rape or etc. on them. Fourthly, the next important aspect is that of poverty and hunger. And since Congo is a war-torn economy, the girls are left with no other option since their families are starving to death, and since the armed militias are paying a good amount of money. So they end up joining the armed forces on voluntary basis. The next aspect is the recruitment on the basis of abduction. So there are 2 regions in Congo, that is the northern Kivu region, and the other is the Haute-Oyo region, where the recruitment takes place through abduction. And in the northern Kivu region, armed groups such as Mai and Democratic Forces of Liberation Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, they are involved in abducting these girl child soldiers while they are living with their families and communities, or they are engaged in the agricultural activities. In case of Haute-Oyo region, LRA is quite active, And LRA is kidnapping girls along with their families, with their parents, and with their siblings. LRA is abducting girls who are of very young age, that is from 4 to 9 years of age. And in some instances, groups such as FDLR, they burglarize into their house, the house of the girls, in order to abduct them. Now, coming to the next aspect that involves the lives of these girl child soldiers in at the war front. Or they stay with the armed militias, where they undergo a lot of physical and psychological distress, and most of the time they are deprived food, or they are compelled to sleep outside. Secondly, they are also forced to transport heavy physical objects and are compelled to walk over long distance. And the girls who are not capable to do that, they are immediately killed or murdered. So some of the girls face trauma on the daily basis, where they live under the fear that whether they will be able to catch the sight of their families again, or even if they die in the warfare, will their bodies will be reclaimed by the families or the communities. They also face loneliness, since they are not allowed to talk to other child soldiers within the armed groups. Another thing is that some of these girl child soldiers are being raped again and again by different soldiers, and according to some of the girls, they are considered as toys by the armed personals, and they are often drugged. Fourthly, they are also involved in brutal plundering and looting, and sometimes they are being forced to loot their own people of their own community and their families. In case of Haute Ole region, LRA compels these girls to basically dehumanize their family members, and if they fail to do so, they are immediately killed by these armed forces. So coming to the last aspect, which focuses upon the rejection and restoration. So if we look at when these girls return from the armed forces or from the war front, their communities and families, they don't welcome them. They encounter a lot of skepticism, dishonor, and prejudice on the if not complete non-acceptance. They are also ignored at the time of restoration, when the restoration process takes place in case of the post-conflict situation. And most of these girl child soldiers are renounced and condemned by their families because of the disgrace and stigma that they carry with themselves. Secondly, they are also condemned by the families because they were involved in looting and looting their family members or community.
Dr. Gauri, you have exceeded the time.
Just 1 minute, ma'am. I'm just about to finish. So they are not very well welcomed by the families because they have this thing in their mind that they were the ones who were involved in looting them or in dehumanizing them. They are not accept. They even beg for the shelter. So that is there. As far as the recovery is concerned, not many organizations are involved. Only some of the NGOs are involved in case of reintegrating these child soldiers, and the process takes place through 4 measures, such as by providing them vocational training and aiding them to involve in income generating activities, the role of education, which in some ways releases their distress and exercises a positive influence upon them and help them to gain their sense of dignity and self-worth through the procurement of knowledge. Then there is role of religion. Most of these girls find their solace from the excessive trauma that they have faced in churches and mosques, and they are also involved in organizing certain activities in the mosque, which releases their distress. And then there are role of foster families, which the girls who have stayed with the foster families or with the foster parents have better experiences as compared to the ones who went straight away to their families and to their communities. Lastly, there are a lot of obstacles since the girls, firstly, the girls are not, not in a frame of mind to undertake anything which is new because of the kind of trauma that they had experienced. So therefore, they are not ready to learn anything new. So they prefer to stay back with their families. Secondly, they are not properly counseled, and the aid that have reached very late to them after a long period of time has passed, and all the assurances which are given by the NGOs, they have also. Yeah. So I would like to say that there is a kind of stereotype that is still prevalent as compared to integrating the girl child soldiers, which is not there in case of the integration process of the boy child soldiers. And I would like to suggest that this kind of integration in Congo should take place at the community level, at the level of the international agencies, the NGOs, and at the psychological level also.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
So, Dr. Saroj Gupta, can you present now? You're ready with your presentation? Dr. Saroj Gupta?
Dr. Saroj Gupta, you have two profiles here. Which profile, please specify so that raise your hand. So I will make you co-host so that you can unmute yourself. Just raise your hand.
Yes, ma'am. Can
Yes.
you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, yes, yes.
Dr. Saroj Gupta is presenting women right in India with special reference to the legal framework and policy issues. If this is your topic.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
1 minute. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, ma'am. This is Saroj Gupta presenting over here women rights in India with a special reference to legal framework and policy framework. As you know, it's a very burning topic at this time, that what kind of legal awareness and what kind of policy framework at this time we have. Sometimes we doesn't know what kind of legal constitutional framework for us. So in this way, I have just write down this kind of research paper, which is on women rights in India. So, ma'am, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you. You can proceed further, please.
Okay, okay, ma'am. Women in India represent over 30%, 32% of economically active population of the second most populated country in the world. The Indian Constitution guarantees equality for women before the law. The institutional support for women seems advanced, with many laws to protect the right of women at work. The labor laws in India can be industry-specific, region-specific, or centralized. As we know, in our Vedic time, it was says yatra narestu pujante ramante tatra devta. We always know that there are a lot of very dignity in front of women, but at this time we should have to know about the legal awareness for the women in India. So next is what kind of methodology I have used is exploratory research design. So universe of the study is selected. I have selected the district Bhadohi, and 192 samples are taken randomly from 6 cities of district Bhadohi. Samples are taken by using simple random sampling method. From sampling frame, samples were drawn by using computer generated technique. Women of age 15 years and above are contacted, and data is collected through interview schedule. So in this way, statistical package for social science version 17.0 is also used for analysis of this kind of data. So data is represented here for simple frequency and percentage based tables and diagrams. So So results are, when I asked some questions about the frequency and percentage of the positive and negative question related to do you feel legal awareness is necessary among women? So, so 183 respondents considered the impact of TV and the legal awareness is very, very important for the awareness of the legal form. Second question was, do you think asking questions increasing your knowledge about women's rights? So 183%, 183 people have given the positive attitude about this kind of question, and only negative persons are only 9 who gave that there is no necessary, that there is not any kind of knowledge which is very necessary for women rights. So there are some main fundamental rights to uplift the status of women. So the article under part 3 of the Constitution of India is relating to the fundamental rights which try to improve the status of women and provide equal opportunity to equal to in front of all citizens, all women, all each and every person. There are also a question which is in slide, I think it has missed. Opinion was, are you aware of organization working for women rights? Some people says that yes, it's very important. 135 respondents were aware of government and non-government organization working of women rights, and 57 respondents were unaware of the organization working for women rights. So in this way, there are many people who knows about the NGOs, who knows about the government organization, who knows very well that there are a lot of NGOs and non-NGOs who are organizations who are working for the women rights. So yeah. So which rights you think you are deprived of in society? So political, the opinion of political is frequency, that was 36, socioeconomy 102, religious was 57, and it the total was 190. According to Article 14 of the Constitution of India, says that including women are equal in the eyes of the law. They are also entitled to enjoy equal protection of laws within the territorial jurisdiction of India. It signifies that all persons, irrespective of gender, should be treated equally in similar circumstances. Article 15 of Constitution of India deals with prohibition against discrimination. It prohibits the state to make any type of discrimination against any citizen, including women, on grounds of race, caste, gender, ethnicity, religion, place of birth, and socio-economic background. It states that all citizens are entitled to enjoy equal rights regarding access to shops, hotels, restaurants, banks, infrastructure, public places, etc. So Article 15 is also related to our equal opportunity and our prohibition against discrimination. To prevent immoral trafficking, which is a very common at this time, that trafficking in women and girl child, that protects Article 23 in our Constitution of India. It prohibits the traffic in human beings and forced labor. In pursuance of this article, Parliament has passed the Suppression of Immoral Trafficking in Women and Girls Act 1956, and it was also there was an amendment, that is Prevention Act 1956, for punishing the actions which result in trafficking in women beings. So there are also a protection against harassment of women at the workplace bill, which is which was passed in 2010. The bill would create a definition of harassment within the workplace and make it mandatory of every organization with over 10 employees to create committees. And there was also Maternity Benefit Act, which was passed in 1961. The act permits a woman to 12 weeks of leave with full pay. So there are some barriers to way of the women, on the way of the women rights, that there are certain kind of articles, there are some shortcomings that we people doesn't know about our rights, which has been given by Constitution. So there is first the problem. What I find is poverty. Poverty is a very this condition when the individuals experience is scarcity of resources due to which they are unable to satisfy their needs and requirements. Second was illiteracy. Third was unemployment. Fourth was crime and violence. And the most important that the uneducation, illiteracy or lack of education is a very, very big barrier on the way of human rights, women rights in our country. So we have to cope up all these problems to know our rights in our country. So my conclusion of actually this research is also on path. It's not in its full conclusion, but I have concluded in many ways that the purpose of this research paper is to acquire understanding of human rights of women. Review of related literature and survey results of research has revealed the fact that there is impact of policy framework on its audiences. Women is most deprived and negligent gender in our society. That's only because they are ignorant. They do not know the right which our state gives him, which our state gives them, or the rights the Constitution has given them. Research may not be the single source to develop women, but it's very effective in this regard. Survey results have confirmed the impact on awareness of rights of women. Therefore, TV and other educational groups, NGOs, and and government organizations should be used as a tool to inform and educate women. Its role should be further increased in the awareness of the women's rights. Thank you so much. So this is a bibliography where I have taken certain records and other kind of methodology and other kind of information I have taken. So this is a thank you so much. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Saroj Gupta. And I would like to invite, because we are running short of time, it is 2:50 p.m. I don't know how many more participants are waiting for.
I think all participants have presented their paper.
Okay.
So we can now end by 3. Our next session presenters and moderators are already in the participant list.
So can we go for the discussion session for 5 or 10 minutes or so?
Yes, you can
or
go on.
Question answer round. Yes.
Yeah.
Because we did not interact with them, so this is the time we can utilize this time. Dr. Nima, you can proceed further.
So I would like to summarize. First of all, congratulations, Dr. Saroj. I think it was really apt for you to have presented the paper right towards the end with the legal framework. And I would like to, this point across is that human rights, when we talk about human rights, women rights are human rights and human rights are women rights. There is no difference. And likewise, human security is women's security. So let's not be confused and let's not differentiate and let's not differ. Our understanding towards both should be very clear. And women's rights are of prime importance. And it was a very enlightening session because there cannot be any sustainable security without a gender perspective. And I'm sure all of you who have contributed to today's session, the 10 papers that I have in my hand right now, right from Imran Ahmed Khan, who started with the half-widow in Kashmir issue, and moving forward with Khairunisa, describing us the ISIS, landscape and issues that they are facing with the Islamic countries, and the media representation of women in the in Malaysia, particularly where she came from. Then we having Ekta Mishra Dr. Saroj Gupta, we ended up, who summarized the whole thing, and Radhika Mittal, Yamnam Vijaya Kumari from Manipur, the political participation of women in Manipur. And then with Dr. Anjum Shamim, Sanjida Varsi had presented an excellent paper, and Dr. Amrita Banerjee, along with Gauri Naren, Dr. Gauri Naren Mathur. I think all the papers were extremely good and excellent, and I totally, I congratulate all of you to have brought these reflections in front of the panel, in front of people, shared your views, and reflected on these fundamental issues and relationship between knowledge and power, and identified the gaps, because it is very important as an individual, not just as a woman, but as an individual in the society, to connect to the community experiences which you all have successfully done. Right from Imran, if I talk about armed conflicts, Kashmir issues, forced disappearance that he described, women problems that he identified, the socio-economic and political issues, and then the identity issues that the women, the dilemma of women, and their struggle with the law enforcement and trying to seek economic security with being under pressure due to the religious biases that women face. So let us, accept the fact that religion is patriarchal, it is biased towards women, and very, very, very well, very well expressed by Ahmed, and and the another the person who's written is Anjum Shamim, very well presented. Indeed, when we reflect back on each paper, there are some certain common issues that are identified, which I will speak towards the end. Coming to Priyanka Marva, how she has expressed about the sexual harassment of women through her content analysis that she has done with the Kushwant Singh novels. Again, let us not forget that the representation of women has happened through a man, which is again gender bias. So you should understand the frame that we are working in, and how we need to move away from the regular concepts, and create a new perspective and a frame for ourselves and change the vision, right, Priyanka? So read Mahashweta Devi and other feminist writers, and poets, and Ismat Chugtai and many other, so that you can broaden your scope and significance, and your work can improve, and try to put more, although you have contextualized it, but be a little bit stronger in your framework. But you have executed the paper very well. Must congratulate you on that part. You were very good, no doubt about it. Yeah. Then coming to Kerunisa, I already spoke to you after your paper, and the divide between the global media and the ISIS media, how they wish to represent their women, and how are they breaking the barriers. But then ISIS has, in the global platform, if you're blaming the global media, then on what basis? What are your parameters? And you need to also produce the facts when you are trying to, if you are putting your standpoint, supposedly, all right? But please be very clear in your, assertion. What are you talking about? Because if you're representing ISIS, then, you need to be very cautious. You need to be really cautious about the ISIS sympathizers, because eventually we are looking at women, security, peace, and governance. So we are again on the back foot. Kairunisa, I think you need to do a reality check, and you need to really, really broaden your scope there. I will not go too deeper into it, but then you need to really, really look into the harsh realities of life. Then looking at Ekta Mishra, excellent presentation, Ekta. I already told you that I had a problem with if. We have to actualize the problems, and we have to look into the reality, and we have to make it possible. We cannot be saying that these are, we have to change the perspective. So we cannot be romanticizing it time and again, and dwelling into the issues. So let's move ahead. Let's move ahead. All right. Then I totally, it was very good. Certainly gender-based. You spoke about the gender balance. You spoke about, women taking the destiny in their hands and stuff like that. Very good, very well presented, no doubt about it. Saroj Gupta, I must say that it was a great closure that you got with women's rights and legal framework in India. But I had an issue with you. What area, demograph you were representing? The results that you were talking about, where did you draw those, where did you run the experiment? Which part of India? So that was not very clear. If you're talking about Indian landscape, it's huge, it's large, it's big, it's, and then your research would become never ending. You cannot concise it within it, you cannot limit it, So problems faced by women in India are grievous, gruesome, real, And yes, you very well pointed out poverty, unemployment, illiteracy, crime and violence, and education being the key. So yes, definitely, women and men need to get educated. Only then sensitization will happen. And acceptance is the most important element out here. And we are struggling because of the tradition, patriarchy, religion, is because of lack of acceptance. The cause is lack of acceptance. So we need to broaden our vision. Okay. Then moving on, Radhika Mittal, you raised questions on why women's security is questioned, and you are very legit when you ask these questions, because yes, there is a lapse in women's security when it comes to be it Indian or international landscape. There are countries who are, there are countries who are dealing with equality, and there are countries who are dealing with inequality. So this unequal, the term unequal is raising many questions. We need to look into it and effectively, take charge and try to transform. Then Yumnam Bijaya Kumari, yes, definitely. Political participation is, is primitive. It's very primary. It's important for women to participate politically. If we are in Indian landscape, yes, definitely. Political participation at grassroots level and at all levels is very, very important. We will be able to form opinions, shape opinions, and change the nation. We are nation builders, and we have to have an opinion, and we have to, express ourselves and bring that change. That is for sure. And it was an excellent paper that you presented, and you narrated the player, the empathy, and the way you presented it. It was very good. You gave examples of Noam and Sharmila. Hunger strike over a decade is something that we've seen her videos, but then yes, there is no recognition, there is no policy framework, and there is no implementation, and we are on the back foot because of the certain because of the prevalent patriarchy in India, and no cooperation from the counterpart. Very well presented. Okay. Then Dr. Sanjeeva Varsi, it was a very good presentation. Kashmir women and the issues of lockdown. Certainly, it's not just alone Kashmir who has, Kashmir has struggled, but the entire world, not just India, has struggled. And yes, it has led to an extreme level of domestic violence. The rates of domestic violence have gone up during this time. And yes, definitely, human security must be an inclusive element, that you have coined in your conclusion, which is very apt. Human security is and should be included and should be a part of the framework. Then Dr. Amrita Banerjee, your paper was extremely excellent. Sustainable development goals that you talk about, and you gave a bird's eye view. Like I said earlier, sustainable goals are incomplete without gender perspective. So let's get this point very clear in our minds. All right. And yes, like we have discussed, poverty, health, security, unemployment, and crime, they all go hand in hand, and women are at the receiving end all the time. All the time. And like we discussed, women are migrants. They are the depressed class. They have to move ahead. They have to be very strong in their mindset and in decision making to bring a change. Moving on, like I said, Gauri Mathur, you were amazing. It was very well presented. It was an excellent paper. You brought out the issues of not just media agenda, feminist agenda, but women and child issues also. You spoke about issues in during pandemic, war areas, the entire session that what we have today experienced with the 10 papers has actually covered not just pandemic, war, poverty, hunger-specific brutalities, commodification of women, objectification of women, kidnapping, and gender-based violence, the psychological, psychosocial, along with economical issues that women are facing are totally, have been the center point of today's session, and we all need to. It is our responsibility to thrive for a new environment. So I would like to, summarize here with my review and with my contribution that yes, we have to move forward, and we have to we have to take these positive steps, and we have to bring a change by being the change. So thank you so much. Over to you, Nandini. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Nima, for wonderfully describing and analyzing the papers and also giving your comments. I think students and teachers and research scholars got many things from many inputs from your comments. So without delay, Dr. Kiran, do you want to say something for 2 minutes just? Because we are already, we need to start our next session.
I just want to say a few words that when I started my research 20 years back, I did with media and women and how media is presenting women in the media, maybe print, or when I went to the grassroots level in the Rajasthan, the villages, when I traveled, I found the same problems persisting since last 20 years. And after 20 years, while attending this international webinar, I'm still finding that the situation is not have changed. Though we are educated, though we have technology, though we have social media and everything, and we are equipped with so many things in terms of there was no calling messages, no night police, no video camera, no cameras were on the roads, but still the crime was happening. The women were suppressed at the home, and the domestic and at the professional level. The things are still existing. So this is what my observation is. The women problems are, when they will get rid of these problems, when I am still waiting for that.
Thank you, Kiran.